today's video, I'm going to be showing you a flying Tinkerbell where Tinkerbell goes around the nail in circles. If you wanted to make this more wearable, you could make it so that she could come off the nail and be put to the side and then be slid back into the little contraption underneath whenever you wanted to show it off. Super fun. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
We are going to begin, like I had mentioned, with that beautiful blue and star sparkly background. So take a nice rich dark blue, apply an overlay over the entire nail, nice and thin, and then grab your star glitter mix or star glitter acrylic, and I'm just going to place those down in kind of a swoosh, going from the upper corner down in almost a backwards S shape down towards the tip of the nail, in this case since it's a stiletto. And now I'm going to go through and just encapsulate this nail, make sure all of that glitter gets well covered. The great thing with working with acrylic is it doesn't seem to slip off those bigger glitter pieces as much as, say, a builder gel would, which can sometimes be a struggle if you're using builder gel, can like to slide right off the glitter. After that's done, file it into shape and apply a layer of gel sealer over the entire nail. Now in a nail form backing, begin sculpting Tinkerbell. The colors that are going to be needed for Tinkerbell are going to be her skin tone color, a light tan, and then yellow for her hair, a blue glitter for her wings, and then some green for her shoes and for her dress. Yeah, dress would be the word. After you've got her face done, I'm going to extend the arm that is facing away from the camera. So the arm that's behind, that goes behind her head, I'm going to extend that forward with her fingers flared a little bit. It's a very awkward way to sculpt this position that she's in. And maybe it's just me as I was working on it, but it just seemed like it was a very awkward position to be sculpting. So we've got the one hand that goes like beyond her head. And as you're sculpting it, it just looks wrong at the beginning. You're just like, yeah, this can't possibly be how it's supposed to be. And you know, nonetheless it is. And then add her torso. And then after her torso, leave a little break for where the bottom of her skirt is and add her legs. Now she's got a very upward curved body position because she's got that kind of like dip right about her core where she's got this momentum for flying around. So you want to create a very, very subtle upward curve with the legs. It's one of those things that if you kind of put yourself in her position and you just imagine flying, it seems like it's easier to sculpt. And maybe again, just me that works for. But as I was doing it, I'm like, oh, this can't be right. And I was like, no. And then I just like moved my arms. I'm like, yeah, that feels right. It feels like that would be the way she'd be positioned. After I have her legs done, I'm going to take my glittery blue and I'm going to be using that for her wings. If you don't have this really light, almost sheer glittery blue, you could certainly use a glittery white or a semi-sheer or a pearly white or something. You just want a very, very light color for those wings. And I found this light blue that's kind of clearish that I had was just the perfect color. However, it's a very, very specific color. And if it isn't one that you happen to have, there are alternatives that are extremely acceptable. After I have those wings, the upper portion of the wings done, I'm going to be adding the start of her dress. Now, I don't know how many of you appreciate or can tell how tiny Tinkerbell is, and the fact that I'm not just sculpting her face in this shape, but we got her entire body. It is crazy. So some of the details obviously were sacrificed due to the size. And I've said that in videos in the past where I've said, it's so small. Sometimes you gotta sacrifice some details. And in this particular circumstance, I think some of the biggest details that were missed is kind of the shape of the neckline of her dress. And it's not necessarily that they were gone. I feel like they could have been, if I had more space and a little bit bigger of a canvas to be working on here, that I could have refined those a little bit better. And it's one of those where it's so tiny that if you find yourself in the same position with this design or any other, don't worry about it. It is microscopic practically. Nobody is going to notice. Obviously, y'all are noticing it now. I said y'all, which is so weird. I live in the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. Nobody says y'all around here besides me, I guess. Anyways, it's one of those things where nobody's going to see it unless obviously you point it out. And in that case, that's on you. But it's great to know that it's not that big a deal. So again, if you find yourself in a position where you're working on nail art and it is so tiny that you're like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to paint that. Just don't. Just skip it. It's fine. So now we have the other arm that is going behind her. So her arms, the angle is similar to her body angle as far as like the curve goes. So they're both kind of, tipped upward. So just imagine a smaller version of the curve of her body. It's a great way to get the arms at the right angle, I think. Add her shoe with the green. On her hair, I first did it with a very, 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 very pale yellow. And then I'm going to go through with a slightly darker yellow because I felt that first yellow was just a little too pale. I'm going to use the tiniest little bit of blue on her shoe. And now take a piece of wire, give it a nice little L bend, short, doesn't have to be much, and then attach that to the back of Tinkerbell. Place that right about the area, like the T of her chest. Stick that down and then go in with more clear acrylic and cover the entire back of Tinkerbell. Go up and over the wire. Make sure everything gets a generous coating of clear acrylic. Obviously not so much where it is, a 1/4 inch thick or anything, but you want it to be thick enough where it adds a considerable amount of strength. Hold her up to the nail so you can see how far above the nail you want her to float or to fly, and then bend the nail at another L there so your wire becomes a U shape with right angles. Underneath the nail, create a little loft with clear acrylic and set a bead down. What you want is the bead to be parallel to the angle you want Tinkerbell to be. So if your nail, like mine, comes and it would tip up, you want to flatten that area out before you put the bead down. Secure the bead, clear acrylic over the whole thing, then fit Tinkerbell underneath. If your wire that's going into that bead underneath is a little long, cut off extra, slide the wire into the bead, twirl her around a good couple times, make sure it all works out like planned, and then if you want to, and you want to make Tinkerbell a permanent fixture on this nail, you're going to glue another little bead to the end of the wire. So this is only if you want her to be permanent. If you don't want her to be permanent, you want to be able to take this off and put it on when you want. Don't do this step. So as you are adding this bead to the back, the hole in the bead is smaller than my wire. So it didn't want to just sit there, cooperatively. Why would it? Finally, the glue set, secure that with some clear acrylic so it doesn't go anywhere. The great thing is when you use that bar bead, it really keeps Tinkerbell straight up and down. So use a bar bead for the one that's holding the wire. After that, and everything is secure and it's attached, go ahead and do any of your final detailing that you want to add with your acrylic paint. I'm going to reiterate something that I find is just such a crucial comment on this particular video, more than most. If there's a detail as you are painting that just seems to be too far-fetched because of the size of this is so much smaller than a lot of nail art things I do. Typically on this scale, I wouldn't do an entire person. I would do just a face or an element of that person and not the entire thing. But Tinkerbell's a fairy and she's teeny tiny, so it just seemed appropriate to include her whole body. As you're doing something this small, go easy on yourself. If the details are not feasible, they're not possible, it is just ridiculous to consider them. It's all right, go with bare minimum. I didn't outline each individual finger, just not happening. And same thing like with her face. I kind of just took it easy on some of those details. It is a-okay. There's no issue with that. Do some details that you can. Start with the big easy ones, the big outlines, things that are obvious. And then take a look at it and think, where does this need a little bit more precision? What spots look like they just need definition? And then do what you can to define those specific areas. Obviously, Tinkerbell should have a face. So I'm going to be doing her eyes, going to add a little nose, eyebrows, but I'm going to simplify it. If you don't want to add eye color, certainly don't. I'm a crazy person, so I did a little bit of blue in her eyes. It gets completely covered up though with the pupil. It's not like it sticks around and you can see it in the end. So skip that part. There's no problem with that. Add a little bit of color for her lips. Take it easy. I went over her lips a couple times because the first time around they just went south. Going to do a smidge outlining on her dress with a darker shade of green. Try to perfect that neckline a little bit. Tiny bit of outlining around her wings, just, bare minimum. And then I'm going to apply some top coat over Ms. Tinkerbell, and then it's all done. And you can fly her around the nail. I love that this one would be just a beautiful little blue sparkly nail if you didn't want Tinkerbell to be there, and then that surprise element if you didn't make it permanent. Plus, any of these crazy flying designs are always fun, and I can't believe I haven't done Tinkerbell yet. She seems like an obvious choice for something that flies around a nail. I adore this. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and I will see you all next time. Bye!